I'm thrilled to say a few congratulatory words about my former professor, Professor David Collis. Professor Collis changed my life in more ways than one. First, he was my strategy professor in my first year strategy class at Harvard Business School, where he imparted a love for answering some of the deeper strategy questions related to corporate success. I still remember him talking about the importance of not being stuck in the middle in the context of Russian ice cream. I'm talking, of course, about the famous Ice Philly case, but most people wouldn't necessarily remember a singular case about an obscure company, but it was Professor Collis's teaching that made it so memorable and made the lessons such a big part of how I think about solving problems in business today. Second, Professor Collis did the very generous thing of introducing me after my first year was done to Professor Michael Porter, who is, of course, a major figure in the field of strategy. And Professor Collis was an advocate for me. And my time with Professor Collis's recommendation ended up being incredibly meaningful for me personally, and really launched my career in leadership of healthcare organizations. So again, I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Professor Collis. You helped me and I think literally thousands of unnamed students become better management practitioners. And also I think when it counted, really stepped up on behalf of your students. So just want to say congratulations to you and best wishes on the occasion of winning this award.
I have known David now for over 3 decades, first as a student in an MBA classroom. He was absolutely mesmerizing. The way he would conduct the class, the insights that we would gain after our session with him were simply spectacular. I would sit in on several of his classes as an observer, and I noticed how, and the students would go on this lovely journey with him, and they would have gained insights that I think many of them treasured for the rest of their lifetimes. But not only has David been just spectacular as a teacher in the classroom, David has been responsible for actually developing and writing several of the classic case studies. Many of the cases he has written are HBS classics, and they're used all over the world. His Disney case, his case study on Ben & Jerry's strategy, and several other remarkable, thoughtful case studies. His articles, several of which are absolutely required readings in any strategy course. His work in corporate strategy, of course, everyone would be quite familiar with. His HBR article, "Can You Say What Your Strategy is in some ways a very foundational question. I've been focusing on David's extraordinary contributions in teaching and course development, but it would be doing him a disfavor if I limited my remarks only to that. He's a wonderful colleague to have. Always got time for you. He's always particularly been there for younger colleagues, very generous with his time and with his counsel, very generous in sharing his perspectives and insights in relation to how class sessions ought to be done. It's just a pleasure and a treat to have him as a colleague. And I am just so happy, so thrilled that the community has decided to honor David. There's no better recipient of this recognition.
David, I'm very honored to give this testimonial for you. You've made a major impact on my career as an educator, and here's how. You're a prolific case writer. You've made a huge impact on my course by bringing practical examples with clear teaching purposes to life. The majority of my syllabus is cases written by you, David Collis. You're generous with other educators, always willing to share teaching notes and slides, even those that haven't been published formally. You've been incredibly helpful over the years in learning how to teach the cases and fit them into the existing frameworks and learning objectives in my class. You're amazing at distilling ideas from cases into formal frameworks that can themselves be used in research and teaching to think about corporate strategy. You're a willing and enthusiastic contributor to the corporate strategy community, and it's been so valuable to have your voice and experiences represented, especially in conversations like the Corporate Strategy and Innovation Conference. Finally, you're a genuinely kind man, which has nothing to do with being a great educator, but is perhaps more important than anything else in the end.
It is my distinguished honor to talk about Professor Collis and the impact he had on me as an educator. I had the privilege of having him both as a professor of our staple strategy class at HBS, as well as being the professor who oversaw my time in the Field Global Immersion program in the Philippines. Both in the classroom and in the class abroad, it was his candor and his high energy that made him so compelling and so memorable. One of my favorite classes he taught was when he compared the differences between high-end and low-end department stores. We were encouraged to yell out what made them great or horrible. The horrible fluorescent lights in Walmart and the cheap products, the soft scents and the incandescent lights of a Bloomingdale's or a Nordstrom with the higher priced items to match. The main teaching was that you have to be as much what you're about as what you're not about. And the key takeaway from that class was, don't be Sears. In all seriousness, I took that initial strategic learning of being as much as what you're about as what you're not about into a lot of my life as well. I learned that it's important to take a stance in business and in life and to not try to appeal to everyone and be everything to every person or be in the middle on everything. And it has also served me well as I recently became a lecturer myself at Cornell Tech's MBA program where I've taught for the past 2 years. I've very much modeled my style of teaching after his. I'm not sure what kind of lecturer I would be without having been in his classroom. His style was one of the very few I truly identified with, and that made me really think that teaching could be something that I'd want to do one day. He often suggested that we mull certain things over in the bath, which sounded delightful, even though I'm not sure any of us had a bathtub that was clean and fit enough for such a thing. He had an amazing set of token phrases, my favorite of which was 5-star crappy businesses. And so if it were up to David, no one would ever go into the gym business because it has no redeeming qualities. And that's just an example of both his humor and directness that left a lasting impression. It's one of the few classes where I can still quote certain things he's said to this day. I'm thrilled to hear that he's receiving this award. No one deserves it better as my most memorable professor to date. Congratulations, David. You deserve it.
I would love to pay a tribute to David. So I met David when I was 21 years old. I joined David when he was developing his original corporate strategy elective, and I became, I think, his second RA working for that course, and spent a year traveling the world with David, writing cases and learning from him. As I think back to those times, one day I just remember, which was so David, we were off, I can't remember, maybe it was Scotty Houston to Cooper Industries to write that case, or maybe it was the General Motors case, we were heading to Detroit. But in any case, David crashed his car on the way to the airport for some interviews we were doing, and yet somehow still showed up on time and for the flight and in a good mood. And I, just thinking about that today, imagining how many hours early David must arrive at airports. David, it has been such a pleasure knowing you over the years. I can honestly say that when I was young, you taught me how to ask questions. You taught me how to be inquisitive. You taught me how to be curious. You taught me frameworks. You gave me confidence. You gave me teaching materials. You gave me a chance. You encouraged me. I honestly believe that without your influence, I would not have pursued this career. I think it was your kindness and your generosity and the time you spent with me and the amount that I enjoyed our interactions that really is why I decided to get a PhD. So I would probably be doing something that I was much, much less suited to in the absence of you. And for the years since, I, along with so many others, have been the beneficiary of the teaching materials that you've developed, the books you've written, the articles you've written, the frameworks you've developed. You've given us so much, all of us, and to me in particular. I genuinely owe my career to you. I want to thank you yet again for all you've done for me.
David, congratulations on this recognition. I'm thrilled that you've been honored with this Outstanding Educators Award.
Congratulations, Professor Collis.
I'd like to thank you for what you've done for me personally and for what you stand for. Your generosity of spirit, your humility, your open willingness to help me, not just while I was at school, but throughout my professional journey. I'm deeply grateful.
Félicitations, Professor Collis.
David's greatest gift to me was not the content he transferred, but an entire way of thinking, and I'll forever be in his debt. It's been 25 years since I sat in David's classroom, but it could be yesterday. I can still see David lost in thought before the class begins, but David didn't really teach a class. It was a tour de force. It would start quietly, like a faint melody. Slowly the story would build. Well, not really build, it would unfold. It was hard to make sense of the pieces at first, like fragments, clues that don't fit together. It's hard to describe what it was like. You thought you understood what you knew, and you knew everything because you were a student, but then you could feel things starting to fall away, and what you thought was a solid foundation that you could depend on, well, it just dissolved and was replaced by some force that you didn't understand, but you could sense its power, and all you could do is hold on. And an hour into the class, the chalk was melting as it flew across the board, and it was hard to see through the smoke from your pen on the page as you furiously tried to keep up. But you tried to put it all together, but it was too much, and you just had to give up on conventional notions of what was meant to happen in a classroom, and instead just embrace the idea that this was something not to be learned, but to be experienced. And by the end, the blackboard was left a bewildering, indecipherable masterpiece that if you had come for Chamberlain, well, you were out of luck, because this was Churchill. This was not constructivism. This was the captain of the gate. David, on behalf of all the students that you have moved throughout the years, through your outsized effort, thank you and congratulations.